Now, all KCC questions expect a brief introduction, 4 direct point with a lot of background information, a conclusion, and that gives you 20 out of 20. Introduction would look something like this. Every peaceful society has guidelines that citizens should follow to ensure harmonious coexistence. When such rules are tampered with, the results are unpleasant. The first point. When Taib was on his way to the cafe, the driver of the taxi waved his hand at him in haughty refusal and then sped on his way without paying him further mind. This was hardly the first time such a thing happened to Taib, but his irritation was greater than in the past. The driver ignored the value of etiquette and respect, therefore suffers a great loss. Unknown to the driver, Taib had power from God to tell something to be, and it would. He could do as he pleased. He said that whoever was granted power like he had to use it only for good. However, his anger got the better of him. As a result, he stared at the taxi rear wheels and both of them exploded suddenly like a bomb. The driver had to pull over. He drummed his arms in frustration, glancing back and forth at the two shattered wheels, wondering why they had burst just at the same time. Even as Taib walked by and asked if he could assist, the belligerent driver, their non-pupil, glared at him resentfully and enraged. It is therefore evident that his action to show disrespect to Taib had cost him a misfortune. Another example, that is point 2, when an argument erupted between a man and a woman in the bus shed where Taib was waiting for the bus, he could not hear what was going on between the two, but studied the dimensions of the conflict carefully. The man suddenly slapped the woman's face with a shocking impulsiveness. Taib was so startled by the incident that he focused all his anger at the offending man's stomach. The brute was stricken by severe cramps and he unexpectedly doubled over, moaning and screaming in pain. He had to be carried outside for an ambulance to fetch him, and voices of those who were traveling in the vehicle confirmed that the man deserved what overcame him. He got his pain of punishment for bad manners and cheekiness, and similarly, he broke the values of the society and pain came upon his body. Point number 3. Taib was a man endowed with immense power, and with such power came responsibility. He was only to use his power for good, and he excelled at this. He performed several acts of goodwill, and memorable services were done by him. He filled gaping potholes, locked a dangerously hanging electric box, removed piles of rubbish, drained a sewer, and compelled Suleiman to pay his taxes. However, one day when he was at the entrance to the tea gate, a beautiful, gorgeous, voluptuous woman catches his eye. Of course, she was enticing, a perfect replication of his lost youthful dreams. He was swept by a surge of delight. His passions were aroused in a way he had not known since he first married his wife Hania. The surprise attraction amazed him. It was far from ordinary and hardly appropriate for one preoccupied with carrying the burdens of the world on his shoulders. Even though at first she barely noticed him, Taib sent her a hidden message. She instantly threw him an answering look. He desired intense pleasure and gave way to it in spite of himself, pleading with his body to get what he desired. In one shared smile, he forgot both his faith and his life. He closed his notebook where he had been writing the plans of how he was going to implement the power he was given, and they stood up together, surrendering to their fate. He left his apportioned duty and went to be with the girl. When he later came back to his senses and returned home one evening, he realized that he had erred. This changed his mind, and when Hania noticed, he lied that it was only a cold. He broke the much-needed virtue of self-control, and this meted untold misery upon him. Later on, the pain could not go away. Worst of all, he was no longer favored with the depthless enough confidence on which he had been drunk for a long time. He longed to practice his secret power once again, but it was impossible. He thought he was going mad. No matter how much he tried, all he met was failure. His miracle was gone like a dream. This pain came because however much he pleaded, that was pointless. Distress was useless. Regret had no effect. An awesome sadness would haunt him until the day he died. This all because he broke the self-control virtue, and now pain visits him like a haunted man. Now, the last point, we'll now focus on what happens to the broadcaster who was telling lies. Now, while refreshing his mind at the cafe with a cup of coffee, Taib listened to the radio as an announcer was talking about the promises of development expected in the future. This annoyed Taib because similar prophecies had excited him in the past, only to end up bringing frustrations. His chest tightened in fury at what the man was saying. He commanded him from afar to say what he already had accomplished. He then remarked to himself that only sneezing would stop the broadcaster from speaking. Without warning, the man sneezed massively, then remained silent. Resuming his chat, he abruptly sneezed again, more emphatically than before. After that, he could not complete a whole sentence. The sneezes kept waylaying him till he was forced to conclude that an unforeseen illness had seized him. Rather than try to talk anymore, he instead played a record song, ironically of course, Walk Around and See. Taib decided that he would purify both oral and visual broadcasting of what was unworthy of their noble goals. He would terminate any talk that displeased him by making the speaker sneeze spontaneously or emitting trailing cries like those made by women at weddings, and of course no one could speak with such trills. Humorously, he also had the power to make the speaker who lied flee at the onset of uncontrollable diarrhea. He would be the popular censor of the dangers that mass communication media had brought. Therefore, the broadcaster suffers the sneezing because he broke the much needed rules of the society. Conclusion. In summary, individuals can suffer untold misery when the virtues that safeguard the interests of citizens are interfered with. This is how to write an essay based on the short stories, and you have seen how I have added background information to every point. When you do this, then you will definitely excel. To the teachers and the candidates, I want to wish you all the best in your KCSE, and always ensure that every point is attached to sufficient background information so that when you write your answers, they can effectively give you the full marks. Always remember to subscribe to Sare Willy YouTube channel to get the most awesome analysis and interpretation of set books. For today, enough said, and thank you very much for tuning in to my YouTube channel. Always watch for the next story, Incident in the Park. Good day. God bless.